where I know now, like God came in, is that the heroin just kind of stopped working, and not because I got like a weird batch of it somehow. It just stopped doing what it was doing for me.
Yeah.
And I remember having that moment, like I'm not feeling that feeling.
Welcome back to the Hopeaholics Podcast. I'm your girl, Natalie Eva Marie.
And I'm Chad Carlson, and you're listening to the #1 addiction and mental health podcast.
And you guys, if you or a loved one is struggling, make sure you head to askevamarie.com or chaddick.com and chat with one of our AI companions 24/7.
Or text the number right here on the screen.
Together, we are breaking the stigma around addiction and mental health.
And fighting the fentanyl epidemic.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Geoffrey, welcome to the Hopeaholics Podcast.
Thank you very much. Again, honor to be here.
Do you go by Geoffrey?
You know what? It's funny. For the majority of my life, I've always gone by Jeff. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of leaned more towards Geoffrey. That's just like my real name.
Yeah.
And as far as like the spelling, it's subjective for me. It's my name, obviously, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I guess part of me is still surprised when people never fail to annihilate it. Geoffrey.
I was worried.
Right?
That's why I said it.
No, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. I think people look at it so quickly too.
Sure.
Or they're all Gregory. I'm like, no.
I mean, it could be Geoffrey.
True, if you put like an accent on that, But
Yeah.
the irony is that I'm like almost 100% Irish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my parents chose that spelling. Okay, so that's actually a Celtic and Bavarian way to spell the name. So it's actually the original way to spell Geoffrey.
Yeah.
The Jeff is the Americanized way.
Makes
So
sense.
with my heritage and my family, then with that, which I love. I mean, I'm obviously pretty eclectic as a person, so
Sure.
I like the name. And
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it when people's names spelled like
Yeah, me
that.
too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
When you went by Jeff, was it Geoff?
Yeah, Geoff. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I am really, it's a privilege and honor to be here. Like I was saying earlier, I'm a fan of the podcast and you guys is, your mission and what you're doing here and trying to put out into the world, hope, experience, strength, all that stuff. But I think which is, I love to talk about a lot too is awareness, is insight, I've been working in the mental health, addiction field for, 16, almost 17 years now. And I'm never ceased to be amazed to how many people who are struggling with addiction are the least aware of what's really going on with them.
Yeah.
In terms of we understand the reactivity of addiction, the proverbial consequences and whatnot, but in terms of what is going on with me, the why, what's going on with my brain, what is my connection to earlier life events and how that conditions my brain, my psyche, and my correlation to why I use drugs and alcohol. And there's such a lack of that insight and awareness, let alone society. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, you know what I mean? But it's so important. I think people obviously, there's a lack of sympathy sometimes and a whole lack of compassion, whereas a lot of other, call it ailments or diseases, I think people or society look at it like, well, this is not your choice at all. This is happening to you. Something is failing right within your organs or something to that extent. And, I think they look at addiction with that lack of insight and misunderstanding, right? Like there is a pathology involved in addiction, right? That's proven, okay? But if you're just simply choosing to do this, then you're not really warranted of sympathy. You know what I mean? And I think that's a huge problem with society, and I see it a lot, and I always resist, the temptation, but I'll see online trolls or whatnot, if somebody's commenting, even a positive post about addiction, and there's always that one person that's like, well, those people, and they're just choosing, and and
Those are my favorite.
Oh, I want to jump in there so bad, and it's not about ego, right? Again, it's about education, but I always tell people that, there's some outliers certainly, but I think the majority of people that have that kind of energy behind it are people that have been wounded by somebody in addiction, whether it be a parent, a loved one, a girlfriend, boyfriend, something like that. Because rarely do I find somebody is so emotionally invested, so fervently in one topic, opposed to like something that's more generalized, like, I don't know, like politics or something. You know what I mean? There's emotion there, and that emotion is there for a reason.
Yeah.
So.
And you get it with politics, like really get it with politics. Like,
Yeah.
It's, pick a side. People are picking sides right now.
Yeah.
But like, people, these people are suffering. Addicts are
100%.
suffering.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some nasty stuff on our Instagrams.
Yeah.
And my son-in-law died.
Yeah, and I know.
You
I'm
know,
so sorry, by the way, for your loss.
and they just, and I'm like, nah, I want to sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No.
want to just tell them to fuck off.
Fuck off, blast them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there is that part of like, I've always been a protector. I think that's part of like God's will for my life and why I do what I do for a living, for
same.
sure.
Yeah.
Always kind of rooting for the underdog. I've been the underdog, certainly, of course, but it's just outside of the emotional part of it, somebody wounded, there's just such an annihilation of understanding, and it creates problems. I mean, policies are created around that lack of understanding or a lack of policies per se, things like that. And and you said it so poignantly, suffering, it's like, and that's the thing where you really have to start looking at it. Bless you.
Thank you.
Human beings, we are not designed nor wired for suffering.
Right.
I mean, we don't choose suffering. We don't do that. That's completely counterintuitive to the whole really human experience. We fall into it, arbitrarily, systematically, systemically, but we don't choose it. It's like, when you go down to Skid Row and any of these like kind of places, you people think of like, okay, Skid Row and that, things like that, or Portland or certain areas that are really bad right now in terms of like people doing it on the streets. Like in my day, that never happened. You know what I mean? Like
No.
I remember getting pulled off the street, like cop looking at my eyeballs. Oh, you're high and taking me to jail.
Yeah.
It's a whole different.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, it's a whole
And
different.
I watch him now. He just got to drive down to Garden Grove.
Yeah. Yeah.
Garden Grove and the what is it? Beach Boulevard and the 22.
I was just going to say it, 22, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, when you see people on the side of the freeway and they're obviously addicted to fentanyl and they're doing like the kind of whole zombie thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's living in a tent. It's like, okay, is that, are they choosing that? They're like, no, you know what? Yeah, I have all these other viable options in my life, but no, I prefer my tent and my fentanyl.
Yeah,
and it's like, come on, even at a baseline level of logic, it's like, okay, I need to look at that a little bit more objectively.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy, man.
yeah, it really is, man. It's a problem,
So obviously you were an addict.
Yeah, I definitely did my thing. If you want me to go into that a little bit, yeah. So, I grew up in a very conservative household. Irish Catholic.
Irish Catholic.
Yeah, private school, the whole thing. Dare the whole.
Yep.
And if you would have asked me at, I don't know, 14, 13, would you ever or could you ever conceive or imagine yourself being addicted to heroin? I would have said, you're crazy. There's that's just so far removed from me and my upbringing, so I thought, and whatnot. And I look at, obviously having the hindsight and the insight I do now, it was a kind of a red carpet rollout for that, I had a lot of, I assume you know some of the backstory too, yeah?
Yeah,
Oh,
of course.
Of course.
Okay. So you gotta
love it.
reel me in. Okay.
We'll
love
reel
it.
you in if we
Okay.
need to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We're winding you up and letting you go.
Okay. All right. Okay. You ready? Okay. So again, same thing. Like if you would have asked me, and this is not about demonizing anybody. It's not about blame. It is about understanding, right? And correlation and causation, If you would have asked me again at 13, 14 years old, like, do you come from a good family? I would have said emphatically, yes, absolutely. I mean, I got a nice house, white house with a white picket fence and the whole thing, like a picture on a farm, which is what my mom wanted, and she had, okay. Parents are together, oldest of 5 kids. We all go to private school, I'm getting decent grades, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't understand like the inner family dynamics that were going on that were already creating changes in me that were making me more predisposed to falling into addiction at a later time in my life, okay. My father has passed away. He died my dad actually died 7 days. I was sober about 7 days when my dad passed away.
Oh, wow.
Which was a beautiful thing in the sense that I got to like hold his hand and look him in his eye. And he was very sick at that point. He died from it's like a rare form of Parkinson's. It's called basal gangliotic deterioration. So basically, it's an autoimmune disease. So basically, the basal ganglia is being eaten away by his own white blood cells, basically. Okay, so it affects his motor function. So at the end, he could barely keep his eyes open, couldn't walk, talk, any of that stuff. But he was cognizant. He stayed mentally sharp, which was hard, to watch that for 4 years. Imagine being imprisoned to your own body like that, So anyway, but I had the blessed opportunity to, he was in hospice care, and to lean in and just say, look, like, I'm okay. Like, and I know I'm going to be okay, and I never used heroin again after that, thank God. And I was able to say, I'm okay. I'm going to take care of my siblings. Like, just go. Just you can let go. And then 2 days later, he died, Good man, great man, provided for me. I know that he loved me, okay? Other than that, as a father, not a lot there, Again, never doubted that he loved me, but he didn't know how to connect with me. He didn't know how to create a healthy attachment dynamic with me. Never taught me how to be a man, just normal stuff, no catching the ball, no deep conversations. He just was there kind of thing, And obviously back then I didn't know how that was affecting me, psychologically, my development, all that stuff. So I had that on one hand, and then I had my mom, who she's still living. And again, I love my mom. I just have to have a lot of boundaries with mom. I'm not going to say mom is fully disordered, but definitely on the narcissistic spectrum, okay? So a lot of overbearing, invalidation, hot and cold, unstable love and attachment, there one day, absent the next, kind of never knew what you were going to get kind of thing. And that's hard for a kid, it's very dysregulating to your nervous system and your development. I'll talk more about that later too. But, parents that are narcissistic, they don't see their children as like autonomous human beings. They see their children as extensions of themselves. Okay. So my mom's relationship with me is that I had to sustain an appearance and a behavior that supported basically her narcissistic mask, her imagery, right? Which at its core is just a way to inhibit her having to connect with the deep feelings of shame and self-loathing she's carried since her own childhood, okay? So all that together, right, definitely had a toll on me at an early age, okay? And then when I was about 13 years old, going into high school, which is like perfect timing, right? High school can be hard enough, I got diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. And it was pretty, it was pretty bad too. Like you see like the whole, probably on TV shows or whatnot, people making faces, noises, like I was doing all that. Okay. So, it was rough. And I've always been, kind of a bigger guy. So nobody bullied me like physically, but daily, verbal, it was like an onslaught, not to mention, you become so self-conscious of what you're doing, and it creates so much, anxiety and, oh my God, the stress, and like my body's doing this. It's like, it's involuntary, you know what I mean? You just want to hide out in the corner, because anytime you go to a grocery store, people are looking at you.
One of my son's friends has Tourette's,
Oh, okay.
So,
and his is more like he says shit in his head, like. But then my wife's Twitch, who
I know. He has Tourette's.
He has Tourette's too, but his Tourette's is like, and it's still like Like
Yeah.
he does that all, and that's
Yeah.
why they call him Twitch because he twitches.
No, that's actually true. Yeah.
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 Wait, so okay, this is just for me, obviously being naive to
Sure.
the
Tourette's.
Yeah.
Tourette's. Now, is there different levels and forms of Tourette's, like each individual, where sometimes you see on movies or television or shows or books where they talk about a person with Tourette's and it's like super, like,
Well, like this dude, my son's friend, like says like cuss words and shit.
oh really?
All the
Yeah.
time, yeah.
Yeah, so great question, and I appreciate you asking it. Yeah, there's different levels of it. There's like your normal like facial tics,
Sure.
right, where you'll do this or like your neck,
Yeah.
things like that, which
Yeah.
is predominantly what most people do. And then you have another more severe form called corporalia, which is what I had too, which is the verbal outburst. Okay, and it's so weird the way it works. Like you'll stick with a phrase or phrases or call it catchwords,
Yeah.
for like 6 months at a time, and then all of a sudden it'll totally switch up.
Switches, huh?
So you never know.
How
you know?
weird.
Yeah, mine was I would say like shit, fuck, like that, and then I got to a point where I was just going shh, 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 like making a shushing sound, but loud,
Yeah.
loud, like
Now when you first, so 13, you
Yeah.
got diagnosed,
Yeah.
right? This stuff's like important because, would you be in class and just like yell out shit, fuck?
all day long.
Wow.
And the kids probably thought that was funny as hell.
Yeah, some thought it was funny, and they'd laugh, right?
Yeah.
Others, of course, kids being kids, would be bullying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think one of the most crushing kind of moments for me once was where there was this kid that I actually went to junior high school with, so I'd known him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd think some semblance of camaraderie, loyalty, something. And he had made a really nasty, like, joke about it, right? And, of course, the whole class erupts in laughter, and the teacher is busting up laughing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
at my expense.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, hey, dude, like, not appropriate, not okay, like, Jeff, you all right? Like,
Right.
And I'm
Right.
just, and that's when I remember just right then, I think is when it started for me too, mentally. I went from really being just like I just wanted to like implode, like I wanted to be like an ostrich, just stick my head in the dirt, just totally disassociated, like hated to go to school every day. Obviously, I know I was going to deal with more of the same. So you can imagine the daily stress of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember saying, hey, God, I know I live in Southern California, but is there any way you could throw in a blizzard? That'd be great. You know what I mean? I'll take it.
And the age is like crazy. It's 13.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Well, it's like
time.
puberty.
Yeah.
Right.
For a guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like,
Just the terrible.
it's just a terrible time. And I was the fat kid, so like I can relate with
definitely
with the bullying.
Yeah.
So what did they do?
So, and it's a weird thing, like even also back to your question too. The only way I can explain it to people to help people really kind of understand, imagine that you have like this energy in you, right? And it builds up to such a point, to such an extent. And the only way for you to kind of mitigate that energy or release it is to tick. So the energy builds up. I do that. It goes down, but then it comes right back up again,
Wow.
which is why you're doing it all day long, right? Okay. But it's so funny as a neurological disorder, I'm a musician too, right? And I can sing, piano, drums, right? I started playing drums when I was like 6 years old. I could be having a full-on tick, episode, sit behind the drum kit, and nothing.
Yeah.
Zero ticks.
Yeah.
I'm completely invested in what I'm doing, drumming, right? And zero ticks whatsoever. So there's a lot of mystery. They know it's neurological. They know it has some play on dopamine. They know people with Parkinson's, because dopamine is also responsible in motor function. Okay?
Yeah.
So they know, which again, looking back, all these things adding up to like falling into addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know a lot of people with kids with Tourette's are already lacking a little bit of the D2 dopamine receptor already. So like having a shortage or a deficit of dopamine to begin with. And the way the dopaminergic, pathways are communicating, there's an imbalance there, which plays a role in why you have that sensation.
Yeah.
So what do they do? Okay, well, my dad, again, never involved in anything. My mom drags me to one of the top neurologists in LA at the City of Hope, and they didn't really understand it that well. So the treatment was probably worse than Tourette's. So they put me on like an antipsychotic, like Haldol, right? Wow. Yeah, just to try to like as a way to regulate it. And the side effects were insane. Like I couldn't sleep. It started to affect again my motor function to where I would like want to talk and I would be like I couldn't get words out, I mean, I'm not talking about stuttering. I'm like, it just,
you couldn't speak.
Right. Literally, and so my parents saw that and they're like, okay, yeah, hell no, we're done with this, there just wasn't a lot of answers, and, I remember my mom saying, well, I tried to just do the best I could with you. Well, yeah. And I can make space for that. But then there's also the part of like where her narcissistic shit kicked in too with it, which just compounded it and made everything worse. What I needed, I didn't need a total accountable lack of accountability environment. Obviously, no, that wouldn't have served me. But what I did need was a lot of extra encouragement and support, compassion and understanding. Right. You can imagine being under that amount of stress, you're ticking, you're distracted, right? And yet somehow I'm supposed to focus in school.
Yeah.
Right? Looking back, God forbid if it was my kid, I probably would look to homeschooling, right, at that point, until it subsided or got a little bit better so they could focus more. They wouldn't have to deal with the onslaught of that. But of course, there's two sides to every story, right? Like, was that very traumatic for me? Yeah, I didn't, and I'm not saying everybody does. Like you said, you can relate, we all have our adversity, but I didn't have like the cliche high school experience where, I went to like prom and all this stuff, like, I'm sure there were girls that found me attractive, per se, but it's hard for a young teenage girl to have enough confidence to even want to date somebody who's got all that going on, which obviously I get totally. So, a lot of isolation, you know what I mean? So I didn't really have a lot of connections at school, but I would come home to where I grew up at and I had like my neighborhood friends. So I had like people acquaintances / friends, I use the term loosely again in high school, right? Because to me it's like, kids being kids, guys will bust each other's chops. That's how we show affection. That's one thing. But belittling me, wanting to make me feel bad, shaming me, you're not my friend, obviously. Okay. So I'd come home to where I grew up, though, however, and I don't know why, but these neighborhood friends of mine, they never made fun of me. They never had an issue with it. They never, they asked me if like, why are you doing that? And I told them, like, oh, okay. Like, that's a wrap, okay. And these guys ended up also being the first guys that got me exposed to drugs at the same time.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So is there a connection there? Well, yeah, of course, So I'm isolated. I don't have a lot of connection, At home, it's my mom's just, you're not doing enough. I had to take this paper every week to my teachers and, circle what grade I'm getting. It just was chronic stress, and I felt like I had no escape, So anyway, so that's all that. And then I turn about 18 and like you said, puberty, right? So Tourette's normally gets at its worst in puberty. Okay. Now in puberty, as you're going through it and then afterwards, majority of times, your nervous system grows, it changes with it, right? Okay. So I'm one of the very lucky, blessed ones, okay, to where I kind of outgrew it.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
Yeah. So like I still have it, if you know me really well, every once in a while I'll do, something like my eyes like that. It's very subtle. If you know what you're looking for, you know me, you can tell, but to the average individual, you would never think, So super grateful to God that got minimized, but I was so just messed up mentally and emotionally, right? And I didn't have anybody to talk to. You know what I mean? I was definitely closer with like my grandparents and my parents, and they were always they were very loving and supporting, nurturing. So I had an outlet there, but life's going on. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. They're doing cheerleading and this, and I had 3 sisters and a brother.
What city did you grow up in?
So I grew up in Santa Ana.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, so I went to like St. Jean's, Delessenac private junior high, and then I started at Mater Dei High School.
okay.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I went to Mater Dei for 3 years, but then at the end of my junior year, I was going to turn 18 my senior year. So that summer, I literally sat down with my parents and I said, check it out, like, I'm not going back, right? Now, if you ask my siblings, oh, we love Mater Dei, it was the greatest school in the world, I'm no. And granted, I have my own subjective experience with it, of course, and I've obviously since let go of resentments and all that good shit, you know what I mean? Okay. But I think even outside of that, just my personality, my sense of like emerging authentic self just didn't really jive with a lot of the people there. And I don't say that in a negative way, to each his own, So I essentially told them, I said, hey, I'm not going back. If you want to make me go at the beginning of the year, that's fine. But I'm telling you now, as soon as you drop me off or I drive myself, you take the car, whatever you want to do, I'm ditching. I'm not going to go. And if they pull me back every day, that's fine. I'm just going to run away again. So either A, and then when I turn 18, it's not going to matter anyway, which is going to be in December. So it's a few months into my senior year. Yeah. Well, obviously, I guess they believe me, So, and my parents were fighting a lot at that time, right, on the verge of divorce. Their marriage was chaotic, like my dad, looking back now, severely disassociated, codependent, married to a narcissist, loveless marriage, and out of his own, like, I think, like Catholic guilt and other things. I got 5 kids. I can't leave, you know what I mean? And then finally, after 20 years, he's finally like, okay, I'm done. And I remember the day that happened, I looked at him and I said, it's okay if we can cuss, right?
Yeah. Of course.
I was like, about fucking time, dude.
Wow.
Like, I was happy because I'm watching my dad, like this man who could have been anything and was still very successful. I mean, he was brilliant. I'm very right brain. He was very left brain, but worked in the aerospace division of TRW, had top secret government clearance for projects and stuff. Had hundreds of people working under him, but a good man, good heart, a good man, And I would say to him, like, why are you doing this? Why are you working all day, coming home, and then cooking dinner every night? Well, mom's barricaded in her room, right, just eating and watching TV. Why are you doing it? Nobody else will do it, always an excuse, right? So I started to see like a model of like, I'm never going to be that. I don't ever want to be that. So the day he said, I'm done, I'm out of here, are you coming with me? I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. And even though he wasn't very involved with me, I was clashing a lot with my mom. So it was more than opportunistic for me. So anyway, I bounced with him, moved into my grandparents, and they lived in Seal Beach, okay? So I enrolled into Los Alamitos High School my senior year, and by that point, the Tourette's has subsided, right? And I had a great senior year.
Nice.
I had a great senior. I mean, now, looking back, there's 2 sides of it, So on one hand, nobody's making fun of me. I found everybody at the school, it wasn't so cliquish. Everybody hung out with everybody, right? You got a guy on his way to being a college draft pick, football star, hung out with this guy. Everybody hung out with everybody, I kind of started hanging out with more of the punk rock music crew kind of guys, and everybody was just accepting of everybody's kind of thing.
And this was a public school, right?
Public school.
Yeah, I went from a private school to a public school.
So you totally get it.
Big difference,
huge,
man.
Huge.
Like everybody was pretty cool. I mean, yeah, there was some people that like we fought with, but
Sure.
like for the most part, in the private schools, I watched it in my kids' private school. They're very cliquish, and if you're not in, you're out.
That's it. It felt very ostracizing.
Yeah.
And especially, again, I'm not hating, but especially maybe a little, but at Mater Dei, it's like, it's football, basketball, and you're kind of in that or you're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, we're Los Al again. It was not like that. And yeah, I mean, oh my God, I didn't have to wear a fucking uniform. I didn't have to have like my shirt tucked in all the time. I could do whatever I wanted to do with my hair. You know what I mean? I could dress how I wanted. All these things, which was really cool. So But at the same time, in the background, I have all this kind of pain and anger and trauma, right? Childhood stuff, and then the stuff with Tourette's going on at the same time, right? So, I'm cool with everybody there, but I'm also looking back, I was so starved for connection, you know what I mean, and friendship. Now I had my neighborhood friends. That was cool, right? But as we started to get older, most of my neighborhood friends were Chicano, they were Latino. And so, as together we're playing sports, Little League together and things like that. We go to different schools. They started to get involved into like gangs and things like that and selling drugs and stuff like that. So I kind of, I still hung out with them, but a little departure there. But they started to go that route. At high school, I meet a bunch of other like kind of punk rock guys, whatever. I meet one, introduces me to another, create some friendships, right? And then before I know it, I'm in my own gang that's centered around Los Alamitos, okay? And it was a primarily white gang, punk rock kind of wrecking crew kind of thing, It wasn't politically based or anything like that per se, but yeah, and for me it was validating. I had connection because of everything I had gone through with the Tourette's. I obviously developed a huge like inferiority complex, you know what I mean? So I felt like, okay, well, the world came at me and now I'm going to push back.
This episode is brought to you by Wolfpack Bags. This gear is meant for anybody gym, lifestyle, to anybody that's on the move. I mean, I like to say that us here and everybody that tunes in, we're not average, we're always a wolf. They have all the goods that you need, especially for anybody that is looking for a bag to carry their meal prep, a lunch pail, anything like that. They have you covered. So once again, go to wolfpack.com, use the code Hopeaholics, save 10%, and join the pack.
Right, and this is kind of like my way to do it. Now, again, I've never been a bully. I've never been that guy, never have been, never will be, so it was nothing like that, but we would get in fights and do stuff with other gangs and things like that. And, when you enter that life, you know what comes with it. This is what you're signing up for. This is what comes with it, right? But we weren't, just to be clear, like, because it matters to me, like, we weren't those kind of guys. Like, we weren't like, walking down the street in our neighborhood and like mugging somebody. No, that's not how we moved at all. And it was weird. It's like we even had like some cops hated us, right? And then we had these weird relations with other cops. Like, I'm not gonna say they loved us, right? Okay, they still looked at us like you little hooligan menace, right? But we would clean things up because right there where we were, like Seal Beach and Los Alamitos, you're right on the border of like L.A. County. Right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. So you would have like dudes come down from LA County, from like Norwalk, Hawaiian Gardens, things like that, and kind of move in to where we were living and try to set up shop and sell drugs and whatever. And we get into fights with these dudes. We'd clear them out of the neighborhood. And so the cops would be like, right on, like, good job. Like, that's cool. You did that. We still don't like you guys, you're still little hellraisers or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, so we had that kind of weird dichotomy with some of the cops, So anyway, in that, I start, my journey of escapism started, and obviously start smoking weed, drinking. Weed, at first, it gave me a little bit of escape. More often than not, it made me kind of like paranoid. It never really jived with me. Alcohol never really didn't do much for me, never really, was my thing. But I was partying like that because kind of everybody else was. And then, so again, all that's going on in my life. My parents are officially divorced, and then one day I would spend some time so my mom kept the house in Santa Ana, right? My dad was temporarily living again with my grandparents, and they had enough room in their house. And then, like, that same year, so I'm like 18, graduated high school, going on 18 and a half, summer, right? That's when my dad got sick. He got diagnosed, okay? And they told him, like, look, this is a prognosis. excuse me, you maybe have 3 years to live.
Wow.
Okay, so he's like, okay, well, obviously I'm not going to go buy my own house at this point, you know. So he just stayed with my grandparents, you know.
And you were 18?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so fast forward one day, so anyway, I would be between houses sometimes, right? Mostly at my dad's because again, my mom and I were always doing this, you know. So one day I'm at my mom's house, and I can't remember, was I with a friend? No. I was I was walking by myself, and I went to go to the gas station, and I bought like in the neighborhood I grew up in, bought some cigarettes, and I'm walking down the street, and I hear this car honking, hey, you know. And those neighborhood friends, they called me Knuckles because, you know, when you grow up in, you know, and it's weird. It's like where I grew up, there was some very like affluent areas, like in like really nice houses, and then you would turn like one corner and you're in like kind of like the ghetto.
Santa Ana.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how it was.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, regardless, like when I would be hanging out with them in the neighborhood, you know, when you're like the only Caucasian kid,
Sure.
you're going to have to kind of earn
Throw
your
down.
bone. Yeah. And I did. So their nickname for me was Knuckles. That's what they used to call me. So they're like, Knuckles, what's up, bro? Like, hey, go to the park. We're going to the park. And I'm like, and they had a bunch of girls in the car. I'm like, all right, they're partying, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. So I follow them to the park, and they're sitting in this big Suburban, and I could tell they were all fucked up, you know, and I know what they were messed up on, and, you know, and then one of my friends, neighborhood friends that I was probably the closest with, right? And I hadn't seen him like in a couple months or whatnot. And he unwraps or pulls out this foil, right? And he's smoking this black stuff on it. I'm like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, that's Carga, man. That's Chiva. And I'm like, heroin, bro. And I'm
English?
like, yeah, you know what I mean? And I, obviously, growing up there, I knew a lot of like the slang or
Did
whatever.
you know that word, Emily? No?
Yeah, you know.
I hadn't heard those words in 25 years.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Yeah.
But I your stories up. There's a lot of similarities.
Oh yeah.
In there, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, heroin. You know, and again, this is where I think like, you know, systematically the walls kind of start to break down. Where again, if you would ask me at 15, would you ever be doing heroin? It's like, no way, man. There's no way. You know, but I think that again, that barrier just been broken. So I wasn't afraid of it. You know, I was starting to transition to full escapism. So he's like, you want some? I'm like, yeah, I'll take a hit. Hit it 2 or 3 times. They were like, okay, we're going to bounce and go over here. You want to come with you? I'm like, nah, man, I'm going to go over here and I got to do some shit later or whatever. You know, I think I was still playing like in a band at that time. So I had something else to do. Anyway, of course, like it was yesterday, I remember walking down the street and literally thinking to myself, I want to feel like this every day for the rest of my life. Every day, every second of every day, I want to feel just the way I do right now. And I know a lot of people I'm not the proprietor of this like sentiment by any means, but I think it's an accurate description. Like I literally felt like somebody finally wrapped me up in like a big blanket of love, you know, and euphoria, obviously, you know, and I'll talk about this more later, but you know, was it so euphoric in itself, or was it more part euphoric but part the alleviation, right, of all my pain and my suffering and my depression? You know what I mean? It's
both.
like, yeah, both. Yeah, probably, you know? So, and I remember saying that to myself. I remember specifically thinking out loud to myself in my mind, like consciously trying to think of things that were really just bothersome to me and hurting, from just like my family being torn apart. Because like my parents divorced, like my mom's side actually took my dad's side, cut my mom off, right? They stopped kind of seeing us, which that had hurt me. I was so resentful for them for a long time. Like, you got a problem with my mom, fine, but like we needed you. You know what I mean? I needed my aunts and my uncles. Like, where were you guys? You know, kind of thing. So consciously thinking about all that, and it didn't bother me. And I was like, man, this is great. No thought whatsoever that, okay, I just did fucking heroin. Like, that wasn't even there. Not at all. I didn't even click, didn't even register. And then, sure enough, like maybe a day or two went by, and then I woke up 2 days later. I was like, yeah, I want some more of that. So I found my friend. I'm like, dude, I got some money. Let's go get some more of that. Sure. And little by little, 1 day, 2 days, and then I'm doing it all the time. And then one day I wake up and I'm not feeling so good, right? And I hadn't made the connection at all. And I hadn't had any drugs that day, I hadn't any heroin that day. And I think it got to be about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I'm just like feeling miserable. And my first thought is like, I'm getting sick, right? Like cold sick, something, the flu, something like that. But even then, it felt different, odd, something I had never fully experienced to that extent, And anyway, so I was going to hit him up to get more anyway, right? Because I didn't have my own connection at the time. And he's like, what's up, bro? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I'm getting sick. I'm feeling like this. He's like, nah, homeboy. He's like, you got the Malias, homie. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, you're dope sick, bro. And I'm like, okay, what the fuck does that mean? He's like, yeah, bro, you get strung out on this shit, bro. You get physically addicted to it. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, I remember that did register for a minute, and then it came and it went, and that was about that. That was it.
Yeah, and then you fucking got some more heroin, and that went away.
That's it. And I smoked it for probably about a year and a half, about that. And then through, you fall into that world, you meet other people, you know what I mean? And, not to say that anybody can't roll into Santa Ana, and if you want to get drugs, like somebody will sell you drugs, obviously, of course, okay. But because I grew up there and I knew certain people that most people wouldn't be in contact with or wouldn't be allowed to have an association with, I knew people and I had kind of earned that trust growing up there or whatever. So I eventually got in contact with somebody who was more of a heavier hitter, and I'll leave it at that in that world. And he was selling it, and so now he would sell it to me directly, right? Because so-and-so introduced me, and he trusts him, so I got that pass, okay? And, I would come into his pad, and he had everything set up. He's got his 45 right here, his huge ball of heroin and coke and meth and whatever else he was selling, but he was an addict himself, you know what I mean? So he's just, remember, he was just smoking speed, shooting heroin, smoking speed, shooting heroin, just up and down all day, And and he says, yeah, you want to chill out, man? I'm like, yeah. You want to get high here? I'm like, yeah. Like something out of Pulp Fiction, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I broke out my phone, and he's like, he was like astonished. He was like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're smoking that shit? He's like, homeboy, you're wasting it, bro. You are wasting this dope, And I'm like, what? He's talking about like slamming it? And he's like, yeah. And I was always too scared to do that, right? You hear obviously overdoses and whatnot, And so he's like, bro, I got a clean needle right here. He's like, dude, trust me, you'll love it, bro. You'll love it. You know what I mean? And you'll see that you literally are wasting it. And again, those barriers, they come down, you know what I mean? My brain is starting to, my unconscious brain is starting to do more of the decision making at this point, which is what happens in addiction. So, less logical frontal cortex, more limbic brain, right? Okay, less healthy evaluation of decision making, obviously. So, all right, fuck it. Yeah, let's do it, right? He goes, don't worry, man. I know how much to give you and whatnot. You're good. He shoots me up, and that was a wrap. That was a wrap. And that was like part 2 of like, I want to feel this way every day, all the time.
Yeah. It's a game changer.
Yeah. And,
I can relate.
Yeah.
My only difference, heroin was not my drug of choice.
Yeah.
Mine was meth,
Okay.
but it started with, smoking it. Well, it started with snorting it when I was 13 years old, but
Okay.
it was my cousin. She was shooting, and because we were always like, no, only fucking scumbags shoot.
Right.
And then my cousin was not a scumbag, and I didn't do it with my cousin that night.
Right.
But he opened the door enough for me to be like, when the next opportunity came,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, let me do it.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And just like you, it's a little different, right? Because I always hear that story, and I've done heroin before, but I didn't get the same, the blanket
of love. Thing. Yeah.
I get it from meth.
Sure.
It's the bell ringer.
Yeah.
Nothing else in the world matters anymore. Nothing.
Yeah.
Which is actually amazing because you got it from heroin, you got it from meth, I got it from cocaine.
Interesting.
And it's like the best feeling in the world at the time.
At the time,
At
right?
the time.
And I think there's like, because I'm very big in my work and just like whether just my work, academia, been very blessed to have learned from some very amazing mentors in the field of addiction over my years. But I'm very into like neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience. Sure. And, I always think it would be really fascinating and maybe it's been done to some extent that I'm just not astute to, not aware of, but like, why do we like the drugs that we like? And I don't think that's arbitrary at all. Mm-mm. Like there's some reason why cocaine resonated with you, right? And I couldn't stand it.
And I can't stand. I'm with you on the alcohol. I'm like, it doesn't do it for me.
Right.
And weed doesn't do it for me
at
all.
Yeah. I remember trying to even like one time trying to get sober before I finally did off heroin, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna smoke some weed. And I remember I did it one time, and I literally I was that asshole like you see on a comedy show. Like I'm in the front seat of my girlfriend Enabler's car, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think I need to go to the ER. Like, can you hear my heart beating? I think my heart's. Can you hear it? Because I think my heart's coming out of my chest. Like I became that.
It's
that
probably
that
like
dude.
beating regular too.
I'm sure it was.
It's just
Yeah,
extra.
for sure.
Yeah. But
I hated that drug.
Yeah, I so and same thing with cocaine. You know what I mean? I tried it, mixed it with the heroin once. Yeah, I liked the rush, but even the remotest kind of uppity feeling did not jive with my chemistry at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so nightmare, meth, same thing. Did it twice. I literally am like looking at, because I've been a mixed crowd of people. Some were doing heroin, at some house party and whatever. Other people doing meth, and I'm looking at everybody doing meth, and I'm like, how the fuck are you guys enjoying that? Everybody's looking out windows and shit, looking for tree ninjas and stuff, and you know what I mean? And I'm just like, how is that fun for you guys? But then, conversely, they're looking at me like nodded out with a cigarette and a Coke in my hand, like,
and I'm missing everything. I think
right,
I'm missing everything,
exactly,
man.
Yeah.
But on top of that, for me, when I shoot heroin, it's an immediate fucking throw up that I can't fucking handle.
Right.
It's gnarly for me.
A lot of people like that. Yeah.
Like, but the first time I just when you I did a line of meth.
Yeah.
It burned.
Yeah.
And then the next fucking 2 days
was
I was like, this is how I want to be
golden. Yeah.
Forever.
And they have done some research, like in terms of like people that tend to be more prone to be, ADHD and things like that, right? Yeah, shocker, right? So it's like, and so it has like the opposite effect. Like the cocaine actually allows you to kind of compartmentalize more in your thinking. Yep. It calms you down, it focuses you, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas me, mine was already, I think, just so dysregulated. So I needed to be subdued. I needed to be calmed, and things like that. And they've done a lot of correlation that I am aware of like, majority of people that are like opioid users, right, are people that are really inflicted with some very, very deep sadness
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a lot of sadness.
Yep.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So that really just comes in there and just, again, it alleviates.
Sadness is I see that, and I've worked in the field for 25 years,
Yeah.
and sadness
Yeah.
sadness is what I see with opiate users,
Huge.
with heroin users,
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
fentanyl users.
Of course, yeah.
Um,
Another thing,
You know,
yeah.
my son-in-law had a lot of sadness. I had pain,
Yeah.
but I didn't really have. I was never really sad. I didn't have sadness.
Yeah.
I had a lot of pain, and
Sure.
the drugs took away the meth took away the pain. I loved benzodiazepines too, though.
Yeah.
Those would just, if I went too high, they would just bring me right back down to where I thought I needed to be.
And I knew a lot of people like that who were like, they were not into like, me and my friends, we always joke, like we always say, like, you're either an uptown cat or a downtown
Yeah,
cat, you know?
Yeah.
But I knew a lot of people that were frequent meth users, but would always keep a few benzos in their pocket. When
Oh,
it gets to
yeah.
that point, it's like, all right,
All right,
we
dude,
can have,
I've been
like-
looking out that window
Right.
way too long.
right. Some sense of self-preservation, like I'm gonna come down.
Is there a
bit.
fucking peephole like button
Yeah.
on my eye?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Right.
bro, that's
The
fucking.
cameras in the
Yeah,
ceiling.
exactly.
Yeah, when the cameras got too bad in the ceiling, and I was taking shit apart that fucking shouldn't
Yeah.
be taken apart
Yeah.
because I thought there was a camera in. Like
Mhm.
that thing right there would have definitely been
Oh,
a
yeah.
fucking
Decimated, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I get
I'd
it.
have broke that motherfucker.
I get it. Yeah. So,
But it's like funny because like at the end of the day, everything's still the same. Like
yeah,
what we feel
Yeah.
is still the same.
100%.
Well, and like
Yeah.
the insanity of where we go is still the same.
Very
Just
true.
like the madness
So-
of where it takes.
Yeah,
So
very
you hit
very
you,
true.
you hit the needle
Mm-hmm.
that day.
Yeah.
And was your heroin use about the length of your dad's disease? From when he diagnosis to
That's a really interesting question. And, all these years, believe it or not, of all the introspection I've done,
Mhm.
right? I never even thought about that. And you know what? The answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, because you were
Yeah.
7 days sober before he
Uh-huh.
passed.
Wow, that's crazy you thought that. I can you believe that's never even occurred to me? I
No.
never even put that together until you
I
said
just
it right now.
well hearing your story,
Yeah.
I put
Yeah.
it together
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say you didn't really have that large of a run either.
No.
Of like
no.
a jump off of like normally people have quite
Yeah.
some time. But
Yeah, it was pretty right to it,
Yeah.
and then 3 or 4 years of
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always
Craziness.
grateful for the fact that I stuck the needle in my arm because, like, I might have been out there way longer.
yeah.
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
the needle just like it took me to a place that I just if I went in public, I was fucking getting arrested.
right,
I
yeah,
and thank God for the old laws,
Yeah.
not the new laws, but
Old
the
laws.
old laws.
the ones that we're used to.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I get in my car, drive down the street, and I got a felony
Yeah,
every
Yeah.
fucking time.
right,
Yeah. and
So true.
and for me, that's what I needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
No, I get it. That's the thing. It's like
There's no consequences for a lot of these
No.
people today except for fucking death.
Yeah.
And that's like you got to have some consequences in between getting loaded and dying.
and because you know what, it's like I look at, for me, those consequences is definitely like, and I'm very spiritual, like God saving my life.
Yeah.
Under no uncertain terms, But yeah, I think, I mean, again, I don't go down the rabbit hole with this, but I think like we haven't figured it out yet. I think there needs to be a balance of consequences,
Yeah.
right? But in terms of what's embedded or involved in those consequences, I think should be like, okay, you get caught with this, yeah, you're getting locked up, right? But guess what? You're getting locked up, but you're going to be locked up in a portion. I know they've tried this at Theo Lacey back in the day. It was called the Fresh Start program.
Yeah.
Wasn't really successful. But again, like, how much did you want it to be successful? How
Right.
much money did the
Right.
county really want to invest in it? Those drug addicts,
Yeah.
Same shit. Okay, so, but imagine if that was really a thing and it was really invested into, right? To where, okay, yeah, you're getting consequenced, right? But we're not just going to put you in a prison cell or a county jail cell, right? Other than like the in-house meetings, whatever, right? Okay. and have some, reasonable expectations you're going to get out and not go right back to what you're doing. At least some kind of exposure. And that's what I would love to see. If I was ever on some opportunity to talk to some, I don't know, these days, but some bipartisan committee, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what I would try to try to instill that kind of reform,
Yeah, yeah. There has to be some consequences, but like, the old law, how many fucking hardened criminals did we create because somebody who got busted with, let's call it a 16th or an 8 ball of meth, or heroin, went to fucking prison, and their life changed for the worse because 100%. They went to prison.
100%.
Weren't even a gang member yet. Weren't even racist yet.
No.
But ended up fucking
coming right out
with
all the above.
Yep. Yeah. And now your whole fucking street life changed too.
100%. And now you have and that's well said. That's so poignant and relevant and so true. And then you get out, and then now you're on that cyclical thing, you know what I mean? Violating parole.
Revolving door.
Revolving door.
It's a 80% recidivism rate.
Absolutely.
Still.
Yeah.
That ain't changed.
No.
And, and it's like until, and again, it's the same old like subjective thing, like people can say, well, you got yourself to prison and, you're there and then you made your proverbial choices. Well, unless you've been there, you understand it's not quite that simple.
Right.
Right. Okay.
They need to watch. They actually need to watch Shot Caller. Because that's a
good one.
That's a decent one for normal people to watch, because that was a normal dude that went. I mean, it's a movie, but this is what happens.
Right. No.
A normal guy that goes to prison and
gets caught up.
Yeah.
And yeah, credit in that part of the movie. Yeah, and then he took it to a whole nother level.
Sure.
But I agree with you emphatically, especially the beginning part of the movie. It's like, that initial conversation, like, hey, I'm not talking about you helping with our taxes money, man. Like, you're going to get your hands dirty like the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's like, well, obviously I don't want to be consequenced by my own people, right? But I'm trying to not get in trouble either. You know what I mean? But there's so much environmental influence and so many other things going on. And it really obviously is a world away from this world, So it's a lot easier than people think to actually get enmeshed with all that.
Oh my God, for sure. And then what's the number one thing that all of us crave? We all want to be a part of and not alone.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's the number one thing where you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm now going to officially be a part of something.
Absolutely. And being a part of something, even if it's nefarious in nature or whatever, is better than me being alone. And not just alone in that environment, but again, like maybe I've held that my whole life, like I've worked with a lot of, gang members in healing and helping people get out and things like that, which I've been blessed to do, and obviously in my own experience, but, every one of my quote unquote homeboys, we had the same dynamics going on. We had problems at home. We had issues with our dads, things like that. I've never met any gang member who just says, no, actually I'm the one outlier, bro. Like my family life was perfect, nothing going on, right? Just no issues.
Mom and dad married, everything's
just,
good, loving home.
Dinner at 5 o'clock.
We had dinner.
Yeah, all
they helped
good.
me with my homework.
All that good stuff. Yeah, no, we're seeking something outside of ourselves that, at that juncture, we don't even realize that is even missing. Let alone how to endogenously or internally, right, give it to ourselves. Which is what we have to learn to do at some point, obviously, and obviously with God and whatnot. But yeah, so it all checks out, So,
What brought you to your knees, to your pivotal moment during that time of turmoil?
Sure.
To really say like, I need help or something.
So it was a couple things. So it was and even though you're in active addiction, I don't care what anybody says, like you might think you're in control. You're not in control. You're not. The part of the brain that's running the show doesn't evaluate and measure right or wrong, empathy, consequences. That's done by the neocortex. It's an entirely different part of the brain. Okay, again, more into that later. But I'm observing what I'm doing, but I sure shit doesn't mean I'm in control of what I'm doing, right? And that dichotomy can definitely exist. A lot of people don't realize that. So two things, one, I started doing things that were like just beyond reckless, right? Okay, at first, me and my little crew of friends, the way we were too busy using, I think, even wanting to get into selling drugs, which a lot of people do. They sell drugs to support their own habit, make money. So we sat back and we just said, like, all right, we're gonna have like a meeting of the minds, right? And we're like, you know what we'll do? We'll just rob drug dealers. That's what we'll do. And we'll get dope and we'll get money, right? Okay. And obviously we knew who we could rob and who we couldn't and whatnot, and who to touch and who you can and whatnot, and that was our thing for a long time, and then that kind of petered out. And then all of a sudden I'm doing just ridiculous shit, right? And again, you see like the absence of self-preservation, like that part of the brain just like, hello, like straight up, doing a robbery in broad daylight in front of everybody when everybody's watching you, and you're not covering your face or anything like that. Probably not the smartest idea, you know what I mean? So, that kind of just recklessness. And so that's what I did. I was with a certain guy, and we literally just pulled over to rob somebody. We were both dope sick, and in broad daylight, did it. Didn't hurt the guy or anything like that. It was more like an intimidation thing. He did kind of fight back a little bit, so it was a little bit of a tussle, right? Pulled out of the neighborhood, made it maybe 2 lights, and we're like on 17th Street, right past Bristol in Santa Ana, and probably 20 cop cars came out of nowhere. Out of fucking nowhere, right? Some on motorcycles, some in cop, gang unit, guns drawn, just like, you're done.
Were they watching you?
You know what?
Or was that
no, I think they were. I don't think they were watching me. I think they were aware of who I was, because obviously, even though I grew up there, right, to them, I stand out like a sore thumb, right? Here's this tall, big, tattooed, white, like, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, not that there wasn't, because I grew up with guys like that, like and I'm not going to mention names, obviously, but the other day I was, I don't know, I was scrolling on somewhere on the internet, TV news, something I saw, YouTube, I can't remember what it was, but I saw a guy that I grew up with, was one of my childhood friends, on a major RICO bust, right? On national news, you know what I mean? And I kind of lost, I knew a little bit of his story, but he was a white guy that was in a Hispanic gang. And I knew a lot of guys like that. You know, it's where you grew up, it's environment, you know what I mean? And here he is on fucking TV in a RICO case, you know what I mean? So, a lot of that. But so that, I think the guy I was with was in a very, and I'm not going to mention any names, obviously, but very, one of the more notorious gangs in Santa Ana in Southern California, very well known, definitely watched. I think they were watching him, okay, especially because of who he was associated with as well. I'm hanging around with them, right? They know I'm not maybe involved on that level, but you know what I'm saying? But yeah, to answer your question, yes, but not me. I think more him, right? Because that was too much of a coincidental, right? Even a quick response time, you're not going to have. I mean, we literally, come on. We're talking about maybe 55 seconds. That guy went in, called the cops, right? So we thought, right? And it was like, no way. There's no way. So got hemmed up on that, locked up for that, got out, and then I'm in this revolving door, right? I'm doing whatever I got to do to get money for heroin, right? But I'm not doing crazy shit like I used to. Like I somewhat kind of learned my lesson with that. So I try to get more creative. I started doing more like fraudulent stuff, which I thought was classier, a little bit better than just straight up robbing people in broad daylight or whatever, or drug dealers and whatnot. And but I would always abscond, right? Because I knew I was going to test dirty, right?
Yeah.
I knew he was going to lock me up anyway. So I was like, well, catch me when you can, you know? And I did that on and off for probably like 2.5, 3 years, you know, in, out, in, out, in, out. And then finally, right, I'd kind of maxed everything out, you know, and I didn't even realize it till one day I got pulled over and, you know, the cop's like, are you on parole probation? And I'm like, yeah. And he comes back, he's like, why'd you tell me that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you're not in the system. So I had maxed out. And I'm sure I got a letter or a phone call somewhere, but I was not home. So, you know, to let me know that. So I was off, actually, right? Talk about not having any consequences, right? So that's when my habit, literally towards the end, where I'm doing about 10 grams of heroin a day. I'm loading up a full gram, one shot. And again, this is, you know, the last day I used heroin was November 21st, 2004, right? So this is a while back. Right?
Yeah.
So there was no fentanyl in the equation yet, right? You know, so, but yeah, every day for over a year plus, yeah, you can definitely get a habit that high, for sure. You know, 'cause somebody tell people like, no way, come on. It's like, no, it's.
Oh, I know a few people that have habits like that.
Yeah, it's possible, you know, and I was like, I don't know, I was gluttonous, to say the least, with my habit. You know what I mean? I did not want to be sober, or even when I started to come down a little. No, not even that. No. So where I know now, like God came in, is that the heroin just kind of stopped working. You know, and not because I got like a weird batch of it somehow. It just stopped doing what it was doing for me.
Yeah.
And I remember having that moment, like I'm not feeling that feeling, like, you know, even when I'm totally strung out and I'm not really getting high anymore, just not getting sick. Even still, like it's not what's going on, like it's not blunting my emotions. Like I'm having a lot of anxiety, like, which to me is a total God thing. Like God was like, you know, I got bigger plans for you. You're not moving, so you know what? I'm gonna get involved now, okay? And I remember one night, I had a girlfriend, again, / enabler at the time, right? Okay. And when she was in the mood to tolerate me, right, she let me sleep in her room or whatever, or worst case scenario, you know, if I was kind of in the doghouse, but not quite, right, maybe I'd be able to sleep in the car. And when she was totally sick of my shit, right, fuck you, you're out of here, right? So I'm literally like walking around Santa Ana, like homeless, right? But, you know, I had 6 grams of heroin in my pocket, so it's like, it's not that bad, you know what I mean? Typical, you know, doing a little urban camping, you know what I mean? So, you know, I wanted to like try to find somewhere where I could catch a little sleep, right? So there was this apartment, and I generally kind of stayed in the area near like where I grew up, you know? I mean, Santa Ana's my home. I mean, you could drive me anywhere and I'm still going to feel comfortable, you know what I mean? And, you know, obviously a city, you know, you grow up there, you know how to behave and how to conduct yourself, whatnot. But I generally stayed in one general area. So it was in that area. Anyway, long story short, I found an apartment complex, right? And they had a, like the laundry room, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of busted in there, you know, and my goal was, okay, now I'm almost 6'5", so I'm like, I'm going to try to curl up on top of this washer and dryer, right, and kind of curl up to try to get some sleep so I don't got to be on the ground with cockroaches and shit, you know. And I'm sitting there kind of in this suit-up, curled-up position, and no, I didn't hear like a voice from beyond, but I heard it and I felt it, you know. And I remember kind of answering God, and now granted, this whole time, even though I was raised Irish Catholic and whatnot, I still had my own connection with Christ. I was always a believer, never doubted him, definitely doubted that he could love somebody like me, but I did love him, you know, and I have a pastor who's a good friend of mine and and a mentor of mine, and he says, you know, I think I'm really grateful that you always had Jesus in your heart, because I would really be scared to see where you could have gone in your life if you didn't have that in your heart, because that whatever you want to call it, that presence in my heart, did it keep me from doing certain things that I probably would have done otherwise? Yeah, definitely. And even then, I'm doing crazy shit. I'm running around with a gun in my belt. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not here, make everybody's ears bleed. But the gang that I was in, a few of my brothers at the time, they got involved with a major motorcycle club, and so now we're kind of interconnected, intertwined. We're doing wet work for them. They think it's great because they're like, wow, now we got all these young kids that we can just pull from, right? So there was a whole other mess with that. I'm getting involved in violence. I'm not even in the motorcycle club, and yet I'm entangled in their shit. So just tons of all that stuff going on, just craziness, But I kind of looked up and I said, like, is this it, God? Like, is this it? Like, sounds like a real victim thing, but I was like, is this it? Like, I'm 24 and I'm a heroin addict. Like, is this it? This is my life. Like, is this what it's really come to? Is this what it is? And I got this undeniable, very powerful message that came back, and it said, check it out. And I'm,
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, the message was, check it out. You're alive and not doing a lot of time because of me. Understand that. Like, I have a plan for you, and this isn't it. Okay? And if you can keep going, I know it sounds cliche, but if you want to keep going, the message I got is that I'm going to make it really, really shitty for you. Not that it already wasn't shitty, right? But I'm going to make it real shitty for you. And the next message was, you're loved. And I'll never forget what that felt like in that moment. You know what I mean? I could even get emotional talking about it right now. Just that feeling, it wasn't a heroin blanketed feeling. It was, like God's love that I actually felt and connected to, and that, like, you matter. You matter to me. You're loved. Okay? And you know what? I'm going to get you through this. But the other main message I got was that, but guess what? You're going to have to walk the walk. But it's in that walk that I'm going to do something big in your life. And I'm kind of laying it out here in bullet points, you know what I mean? It was more of a combination of just thoughts, feelings, but images, but that was, without a doubt, that was the message, right? It was not even remotely unclear, And I said, okay. So 2 days later, I'm walking down the street, and right next to this house that was owned by one of our friends' dads, that every once in a while he would sneak us into, and we all get loaded for a few hours and bounce, right? Two houses down, or next to that house, was like a property that, had been available for rent, right? For like ever, right? One day I'm walking down the street, and I happen to notice there's this guy who's watering the front lawn. And which was curious to me because, it had been, vacant for so long. And I walked up to him, typical, and I'm like, hey, man, can I bum a smoke? And he's like, yeah, bro, sure. And so we're light up the cigarette, I take a few drags and whatnot. And he's kind of looking me up and down. He's like, so, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, me? I'm good, bro. I'm good. Thanks for asking. I thought it was kind of a weird question, you know what I mean? But like, no, I'm good. I'm great, man. He goes, okay. He goes, well, my name's Dave, right? And I'm a recovered alcoholic. And this just opened up, the sober living just opened up, and I'm the manager here. And I want to give you my card. And if by chance you ever do need any help, give me a ring. And I was like, yeah, sounds good, bro. Okay, whatever. But I kept the card, And 2 days later, I was, in the car with my girlfriend / enabler at the time. And that same kind of message, God, that, from that night came over me. And again, like the dope literally was not working. It just wasn't getting it done. And I just said, you know what? Fuck it. I surrender. Like, I didn't know what the hell that was going to look like. That was terrifying to me, you know, all that stuff. But I said, I can't do it anymore. My brain wanted me to keep doing it, obviously, but my soul, my spirit was just like, I can't anymore, you know? So I called the number on the card. I called the guy, Dave, and I told him, I said, yeah, I don't know if you know this, bro, but, when I saw you, last week, like, I was pretty fucked up. I've been struggling on heroin. And he's like, no shit, right? Like I know, like, tell me something I don't know, kid. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny looking back. But so anyway, I sat down with him, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to get off this crap, man. I really want to get off this crap. And he's like, okay, well, we got to get you detox first. Now back then, it's a whole different ball game. They didn't have Suboxone, and they didn't have an ambulatory medical detox. You would go to Stanton Detox or Charlie Street and try to do it cold turkey, which I tried a few times, and that just wasn't happening, And I accepted that. I don't care how willing I was mentally, maybe there's some dudes that have pulled that off. I don't know any that did, with heroin, I mean, you know what I mean? But I just, you got to accept what you're going to do and you're not going to do. So, so what he actually ended up doing was, and I was really hesitant about it because I had heard horror stories about it, right? But he's like, look, dude, you can either try to do this cold turkey, right? Or we can try to get you on some detox program, okay? So I sat down, we researched it, and he got me over to the clinic in Santa Ana, and he got me on like a 28-day methadone detox program, okay? I started doing that, and then I moved into sober living with his sober living home, right? And I asked him to sponsor me, but the guy ended up being one of the most kind of premier figures in my life that helped change my life. He wasn't just a sponsor, he was a brother, he was like a father figure, he was a mentor, and so much more, So he got me set up with that. He said, I'm fine with it, we'll keep it locked up right here, you know what I mean? You'll take your dose, you know what I mean, et cetera. Because initially, let me back up. I tried to do it in the 28 days. It just wasn't working, right? Because at that point, my habit was so high, right? So I talked to the doctor. I just had to go a little bit slower. But I didn't want to be on methadone either, right? So I didn't want to get on that trap, right?
Worse.
Right. So I had a viable plan. We just extended it to about like 4 or 5 months, right? But I stuck to it, right? Every 2 weeks, I'm coming down this much, till I finally got to the thing. And I was really proud of myself. I did it. I was totally off the heroin, never did any heroin in the meantime while I was on the methadone, stuck to the detox plan, the protocol, off everything. Now I'm in sober living, and now the real work begins, And I'm introduced to meetings and things like that. And, when I say like the guy was such like, definitely God put this guy in my life, this guy taught me like that it was okay to be vulnerable. He taught me that, there was power in being able to own your feelings and your emotions and express them, and that, that I mattered to him, like, things I've gone through, like he was there to listen and be empathetic to and sympathetic to. And I was a mess. That's putting it lightly. Now, okay, maybe I'm sober, right? My mindset is total street, institutionalized mindset, and I'm bringing all that bullshit energy into that environment. And that guy was so patient with me. Many times he's like, come here. What are you doing? He's like, bro, we're not doing this. You're not here anymore. That whole thing. And I'm not talking about, again, like me bullying people. I'm just talking about I was very reactive, and then so angry. I always tell people, my drug of choice wasn't heroin, it was anger. Anger was my drug of choice. It made me feel safe. I could feel like I could thrive in it. It was a way for me to overcompensate for years of feeling less than and weak. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Puts fear in people too.
It did. It did, which is a way for me to overcompensate. And again, I never did that as a bully, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I remember, like, even in getting in fights, like even getting hit, it crazy as it sounds, like it felt good. It was release, I was all about it. Whether I kicked some ass or got my ass kicked, the whole lifestyle. It was just a way to externalize all that. Obviously not in a healthy way, right, of course, but nevertheless, there was something cathartic about it regardless. So, a lot of corrections and that and guidance and that. And then there were some other older guys that had moved in who, like, took a liking to me and I guess obviously saw what I couldn't or didn't see in myself at that juncture and potential. And then at that point, he said, hey, man, like, I'm noticing that you have, like, leadership potential, and you're starting to make some changes and I see that, and I'm noticing, like, some of the guys coming to you, talking to you, and you're giving them, like, really just good advice. He goes, what do you think about being my assistant manager? And I was like, me? Like, yeah. I was humbled. I was doubtful, but I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's do it. And and I knew what he was doing. He was just wrapping me up even more, right? Which he did, and it did. And I was even more involved in the meetings and the community and being of service and things like that at that early juncture. And a lot of just really, again, cathartic moments, even with the men in that house. And then there was a group of men that, because I made a commitment, I said, I never follow through with shit. I'm going to stay here for a year. No matter what, I am not leaving the sober living home at a minimum for 365 days. I'm not leaving, okay? And I stuck to that commitment. But, when I said, like, the growth, like, I remember I'll give you an example, like a moment, like, one night we would go to sometimes, outside meetings, right? And I forgot to mention, like, so he sponsored me, but my grandparents also found me, like, a really good therapist that I was seeing to on the side. So that was huge, helping me unpack all these things and, huge. So amazing guy. But yeah, like, we went out to a meeting and I remember one night, like, this guy, Jesse, that was a roommate of mine in the sober living, and his girlfriend would always show up at the meetings, and, God bless her. She was just one of those people that just hadn't quite learned to let go of the drama. You know what I mean? Okay. And she, after the meeting, she went around, like, spreading rumors about me, like, saying, oh, like, look how sweaty Jeff is, right? Like, he must have relapsed. He must be high, you know what I mean? And I remember I lost my shit. I went fucking Richter, like, because I think for me at that time in my life, like, I was in such a vulnerable spot and I was really doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, my integrity mattered to me, you know what I mean? Like, the character mattered to me. I was all in and I actually started to feel hope, So it really got under my skin, and that's where, like, old me, right, got in Jesse's face, right? And I'm like, hey, bro, you need to check your girlfriend, or you and I are going to have a problem, da-da-da. Dave comes around the corner, says, what are you doing? Here we go again, brings me back yet again, patient with me again, brings me to his office, and he's like, what's wrong, man? And I don't know why this memory will always stand out so kind of fervently, but I sobbed. Like, I went from being angry and I'm ready to, like, beat this guy up, because that's just how I compensated, and I just, everything that was there, that had been there, even though, yeah, I was seeing a therapist, whatever, but I feel like it all came out in one moment. And I felt kind of embarrassed then, but now, no, I'm looking back, it was a beautiful moment, but I'm like, like just sobbing. and the man just sat there and listened to me purge for like an hour and a half, and just earlier things I had gone through, earlier traumas I'd gone through when I was really little, that, things that like my mom didn't even know about till I told her like I was an adult, like just all this stuff just came out, you know what I mean? And he was able to listen, and that was just a lot of the catharsis of showing me, okay, like the value of vulnerability. And for me, vulnerability no longer being a liability, but an asset, and the value of connection, and really understanding like what is the power of the group? Like, yeah, connection's the opposite of addiction. We've heard this, we know this, yes, of course. But, like the power of the group is spiritual, yes, but it's like anybody coming through detox and then early recovery, everybody's going through post-acute withdrawal, okay? The logical part of your brain, your mind, your frontal cortex is atrophied, and it's going to be for a while, okay? You're lacking dopamine because your brain is used to the, exogenous ingestion from drugs and alcohol, so it stops its own production of dopamine. That causes the pause, right? All these things, okay? The power of the group is like, hey, the power of the group compensates for what, like, my brain is not able to do at that moment on its own, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? My brain's lacking the ability for a lot of critical thinking, a lot of forward thinking, a lot of linear thinking. But when I got 4 or 5 people around me, that I have love and respect for and I trust and I can be vulnerable with, and they all say, hey, that thing you're thinking about doing, not a good idea. You listen, right? The old expression, like, they see the back of my ears better than I do kind of thing, right? So I started to connect to that and see the value of that, And from there, I stayed, and then the owner of the Sober Living organization, he talked to Dave, and they said, hey, we want to offer you your own house. And that was like a huge deal for me. I'm like, wow, like, you want me to manage a house? Like, wow, okay. And so they put me in a house on Garden Grove Boulevard, right? Kind of near, like, you remember where like the old Crystal Cathedral was? Mm-hmm. So kind of like in that area. And it went really well, and it just wrapped me even more into the whole community, and it's all God for me, guys would start coming to me, not because I'm the manager, but just for advice. I liked the advice I was giving them, and sharing my own experience and what I'm learning, and things like that, and what I'm getting through like my own therapy process and whatnot, and start sharing that stuff. So I started to like develop a passion for like helping others, Now, this is where like my life kind of comes full circle. We would have these big like manager meetings once a month where every manager of every sober living home would come together, big monthly meeting, The owner would talk to us about certain things and whatnot. Okay. And there was a guy that managed another house, and he goes, hey, man, I just want to compliment you. I'm hearing like a lot of great things about how you're running your house, man, and that the guys love it. They love what you're doing over there. I added things that were not part of the protocol. Like, we did our own, like, I kind of started like a men's, like, it was a meeting, but it wasn't a meeting. Just like, let's just talk about where we're at as men, and learn to be vulnerable with each other. Like, they heard about me doing that and whatnot. And he put the idea in my head, God, however you want to look at it. But, he's like, you ever think about going back to school, man, and maybe helping people? And I was like, huh. And clicked.
Let's I want to jump to where you are today, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
You were the clinical director at Treehouse for a while?
I was.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so that's where it
like
planted the seed, is at you being a house manager, him seeing what you're doing at that house, and then all of a sudden you went back to school, and now you became a licensed therapist, and then a clinical director at actual treatment facility.
Yeah.
If that's not God, I don't know what it is.
Exactly. You know, and I didn't start at Treehouse, you
Sure,
know, but
sure.
the journey, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. If that's not God, what is? That's 100% God. You know, only God can take somebody where I was, you know,
Doing what you were doing.
doing what I was doing, not only what I was doing, but everything that I've gone through.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm
Wrap
not
it up in a pretty bow and fucking
there you go.
produce this guy
Yeah.
that's sitting in front
Yeah.
of us today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's our story.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well, I mean, her story's a little bit different. She got wrapped up in a bow way quicker than I did. It's like fucking 3 weeks out of fucking rehab.
Yeah, but before that,
Huh?
no.
I know. But you got
But my bow was just prettier later on.
it was a quick
Prettier
bow. Yeah. I mean, God's done some cool shit in all of our lives, man. And that's why this podcast is like so important because like, I mean, the work that you're doing today and just from listening to you talk, even especially at the beginning when you were talking about you know, about the brain and neuroscience and all of that stuff. And I mean, we could we probably have to do a part
Yeah,
two
we
with
do.
you,
Yeah.
dude,
We
because
do.
to be honest with you, I need the rest at some point. And it's just that we're running out of time.
Well, I want a part two because you go into just like from just the neuroplasticity of our brains and like how I don't feel like a lot of people, maybe now more so because you have like the Huberman podcasts and those guys that are scientists and stuff that are tapping into it and doing what we're doing, which is spreading awareness because that's really the name of the game because a lot of people have this misconnotation of addict or an alcoholic because an addict and alcoholic is your son, your daughter, your spouse, your next door neighbor. It's not like, you know, these individuals that we like to pretend that are just these deadbeats that are choosing this life underneath a bridge.
Nefarious individuals.
100%.
Yeah.
So, like you hit the crux of like why we exist too, because you have pain to purpose. And so it's, you know, education, awareness, hope.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's why, I mean, that's my whole life is turning pain into purpose, you know? Yeah, and I would love to do part
We
two.
have to do a part two because it's like you have so much knowledge and you're
Thank
so
you.
well spoken.
I appreciate it.
That I feel like we've only tapped really the beginning of your journey, which is like how you got to be the man that you are today.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a disservice if we don't do a part two.
Yeah.
Because like we just got all the good stuff for people to hear and listen to like how you kind of became the addict.
Sure.
And like what brought you to your knees to then hopefully like get that help that you ended up getting. But then now look at this like beautiful life that you have created through that pain to give you what today I believe is your purpose.
No, and thank you. And again, it would be an honor. And I mean, that's the stuff like, you know, telling my story, it's an honor. I'm humbled to do that. Of course, I love, but my passion is speaking on the neuroscience.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
to be honest,
the
your
holistic and
passion
trauma.
is on our piece of paper right here. We didn't even have your backstory. We have Miss Emily over there works really hard on.
So we haven't even dived into like our notes on you,
yeah,
which is like really crazy because normally it's not like that.
Yeah.
Like, but that's why I really think that we need to do a part two, just because like even like the body awareness.
I need to know about the 17 years of clinical experience
Totally.
and what comes in between that, because like that for me is like that's also like a big part of my story. You know, I didn't go to the clinical side. I went to the business side of addiction treatment. That was just the side that God called me to.
Yeah.
I did go back to school. I was at Saddleback in 2001 or two, going to get my drug and alcohol counseling certification.
Remember Saddleback did that? Yeah.
Yeah, they still do it.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I went to Intercoast to get that.
Did
but
you?
Yeah, but yeah, Saddleback's a great,
And as I'm in there, like all these other opportunities at the treatment center that I was working at kind of fell into play, and I was like, oh, I love this.
Awesome.
I was like, I know this is what God wants me to do.
You knew, yeah.
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 And here I am 20 some years later.
Beautiful.
You know, we have the Infinity Group. We have
Awesome.
7 different treatment centers.
Incredible.
Hope by the Seas, my oldest, it's 23 years old.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
October
very aware
15th.
of Hope by the Sea and how long you've been around, yeah, like and my compliments, man. You know, you've done it right. Like your integrity, but like the treatment center speaks for itself too. You know, because
Thanks.
we know that's not always the case out there. You know, so
No, somebody might have really good integrity and
Yeah.
you know, and a good treatment center and have a
Yeah.
hard time keeping their beds full. There's so many
well,
variables to
yeah,
this thing.
too. And I just, you know, like I love like not only just because it's my passion, but yeah, if you know I'm able to come back and do that and just explain like, you know, how I treat
Yeah.
addiction.
Yeah.
You know, what's really going on, what addiction is, really what it is, what it's definitely not.
Yeah.
What's happening in somebody prior to addiction, what makes them predisposed, what is going on while they're under the influence to an extent, and because that's the stuff that I really want so many people to be aware of and educated. For the client, it gives them permission to forgive themselves,
Yeah.
first and foremost, in a lot of areas,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Number two, it gives really comprehensive understanding to family members and hopefully start to bridge a gap in these misgivings and misconceptions and stigmas regarding the projections of society, which hopefully on a pyramid level can evolve to, again, on some level, having some things set aside so that the people who are running this country finally get that this is an endemic, and the amount of attention that is being, you know, put towards it is an abomination. It's not acceptable.
Well, it's
You know what I mean?
completely not acceptable
You
in
know?
the fact that the number one cause of death for individuals 18 to 45 is an opioid overdose
Yeah.
or fentanyl poisoning, one of the
Yeah.
two.
Well, it'll start.
It's completely unacceptable. And then when you add in the fact that addiction and alcoholism as a whole kills almost 1 million people every year.
Yeah.
It's
Staggering.
It's fucking staggering,
Yeah.
and like that's insanity.
Yeah.
And we don't treat it like we treat other stuff. And on top of that, our whole system is fucking broken with the insurance companies because
Oh,
like
man.
you know, it's like that they want us
Horrible.
dead. They want us dead. We might as well be Canada.
No.
No, I'm gonna talk shit right now. I won't, dude, because what you. I know our listeners want to hear the rest
Yes.
of this because so what we'll do is when we're done,
Okay.
we'll go
Figure-
have Catherine re-email you
Okay.
So that
and
we can
set
do a
up
part
a
two.
Great.
Because
set
you
up a
said
part
you
two
work right down the.
because we
Yeah,
need the part
so-
2 is going to be an hour and a half long as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so yeah, and then also like I can throw in there too. I like to be able to talk about this too. Is you know not only dealing with the insurance companies, that kind of stuff, but like what do you do in your life also too, which I use to inspire other people too. It's like I have a crazy like health story I've gone through the last
Oh.
4 years too
Amazing.
that I've overcome. And I mean, again, talk about God and this being my purpose. I mean, I'll save it next
Yeah.
time. But yeah, and where that goes and my journey with that and you know, having to be back in the hospital, right, put on opiates again and things
Yeah.
like that.
Fuck.
You know what I mean? And
That's so scary
and how I
for a fucking
yeah.
heroin addict.
Yeah, and how I navigated through that, and just let people know, like, you know what, like you can do that. You can.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it, the right way to do it, and I was able to do it. Thank God, you know. But yeah, I just, you know, it's the more people understand this thing for what it is, and you know, and here's the deal. I'll leave it at this, if I may. Like, it's really not a mystery anymore. You know, it really isn't. We understand what it is now. You know, in regards to the most viable way to treat it, well, that's an ebb and flow thing. We're working that out still. I think clinically in that world, you know, what is the most viable way? What are the most credible modalities to use and things like that? And that's always going to be an evolution, of course. But in terms of like what it is, what it's really rooted in, what's going on, like I said, with the person, it's like, yeah, that's all the stuff that it's an honor to be able to share about and talk
Yeah.
Yeah.
about. So,
That'll be
yeah,
fun.
it'd be an honor. Thank you.
Thanks. We will
So
schedule
stay
that.
tuned for
Stay
part
tuned, guys. Yeah,
All right.
part 2.
Yes.
All
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor, truly. Appreciate it.